let's get going. I guess I'm running the show again. Feel better, Sam. So this is the study session for January 9, 2020. Sam, who I spoke to earlier today, is still feeling badly, so we'll send him good vibes. We have three things to tackle in our study session tonight. First, we're going to start with an overview of our emergenetics profile, and Heidi is here to walk us through what this all means and how we should feel about it. And then our second, and that'll take about an hour, our second item will be our respective presentation of our board and commission reports. We've got 75 minutes for that. Lynette's already warned me that some of you were thorough in your summaries of the letters. Some of the summaries of the letters were longer than the letters themselves. So we just remind each other that we're going to take 2 minutes per board. So you need to be a fast talker. And then we'll wrap it up with just kind of a quick review of all the various process and work plan suggestions. We did manage to generate 12 years worth of work to do this year. And so we have a really great opportunity at the retreat to narrow that down to a manageable amount. And we're just going to touch on that really quickly. I think Jane's going to walk us through the projects that are underway right now. And I think this will be a quick opportunity for us to ask each other questions. If anything's unclear on this, we're not going to make any decisions tonight. We're not going to disagree or agree with each other. We're just going to look at what we've teed up for ourselves, and then we'll maybe wrap with a quick overview of the agenda for the retreat. Do you want me to start? Okay, I've been told that we're going to start with the review of the agenda. So you should have on your table in front of you the agenda that Mary and Heather and Jane and I put together, and I think we've looked at this at least once before. A couple of notes. When we gather at 4 o'clock, our hosts at Growing Gardens would like to give us a little 5-minute description of what they do at Growing Gardens, and I think we'll enjoy that. As a matter of fact, if it's a nice day, maybe we'll walk around outside a little bit during one of our breaks. And then we'll get right into the agenda. We'll start with an icebreaker in which we will introduce each other using our emergenetics profiles, which we'll talk about here in a second. And we'll spend the rest of the evening, including over our dinner break, working on some procedural changes that you all have recommended. And then Saturday will be our day for preparing the work plan. We will, Adam needs to leave by 2 for a wedding that he's in. And so, Heather, we're going to endeavor to not do anything important after 2 o'clock. That's right. No adjective. We'll have a no adjective rule on Saturday. And we'll be very, 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 very efficient in our discussions using no adjectives. That was was it an adverb? Dang, I was not very good at that. Thanks. Slap down. Some folks have asked that we retake our council group photo because the one that's up there right now is not maybe the best. And so we're going to wear something nice on Saturday because we're going to do another group photo at 10 o'clock during our break. What's that? You're going to be the only guy in a tuxedo. All right. Any questions or amendments to the draft agenda? We can obviously make changes on the fly, but this is kind of our going in thinking. Anybody have any changes? Okay, we're going to go with it. Would you like to introduce Heidi to us?
Sure, I'd love to. First of all, I've only just now met, so I will do that.
Is your...
Hi, I'm Heather Bergman. I know many of you for a long time and some of you for a very short time. I will be your facilitator a little bit tonight and then for the whole retreat. This is Samuel Wallace. He works for me. He will document your conversation and leave out every single adjective. So as Sam mentioned, Sam and Mary provided a fair amount of direction and vision for this retreat. And by Sam, I meant Bob. And one of the things we've done in the past that has proven to be quite helpful is to have council members get a better understanding of how you as individuals think, how you process information, and how that shows up on the dais, both at an individual level and as a group level. So I've asked my friend Heidi, who is an expert in emergenetics, to explain it all to us, and she's going to take it away.
That sounds great.
Do smart stuff now.
Okay, time for smart stuff. Yeah, me too. It was a pleasure to meet the new members of council and get to see some of those of you who I haven't seen in quite a while. So what I plan to do in this next bit of time is a really short version of emergenetics, what it is, not a lot of background on it, but just so that those of you who have gotten profiles for the first time tonight can understand what you're looking at when you get to your profiles. And then do a little, not a really deep dive, but a little bit of a dive about you as a team. So I won't go over any of your individual stuff tonight. You'll be left with that in your hands today. You'll be pairing up and learning more about each other based on your emergenetics, and then anybody who wants a little more time understanding their individual stuff, just, take me out for coffee sometime, and we can do that. So that's the plan. Let's see if I can figure out how to do this. There we go. Maybe it just needed to wake up. So Bob did the most amazing job when he first talked about what this was called, emergenetics. I stumbled over it constantly when I first started working with this tool. It's an interesting name. It actually makes a lot of sense because it comes from the field of study emergenesis, which is looking at both your genetic wiring as well as what you've been exposed to up to the age of early adulthood, probably around 18 to 21. At that point, most of what we measure on this instrument is pretty solidified in you and unlikely to change after that. And so it's patterns of thinking and behaving, as Heather said, that it's all about preference. It's kind of where you want to spend your energy and how you tend to loop things through your brain, how you prefer to show up and behave. Doesn't at all measure your skill. So this isn't about what you're great at and what you're not great at. It's just sort of where your thinking preferences and behavioral preferences are. So we don't get to use it as an excuse, and nobody gets to put themselves in a box over it. That said, it's a great data point, and you might be familiar with some of the data points that you see up on the slide now, the psychological motivators like the Enneagram, MBTI and Insights, which is like MBTI on steroids, same Jungian psychology, but a little more rigor to the instrument. 360 feedback, all of these are great ways of learning more about yourself. This is a great tool, and it's been used quite a bit with counsel, and I use it often when I'm working with teams because it has very good statistical rigor, which I feel good about. That right there tells you something about my thinking preferences. You can try to guess what my profile is by the end of the evening. I like that, and I think it's pretty user-friendly. On that one page that you see an example of there, you get a lot of good information. You will all get a narrative along with this that gives you much more detailed information about you. But just by looking at this, there's a lot there, and it becomes very easy to understand. So it's a great way not just to understand more about each other, but to understand how to work well together, what your tendencies as a team might be, where you have great strength, possible gaps, and be more intentional in that way than in how you show up. You don't have to be, that's just how I am. I don't balance my checkbook because I don't have any green. You actually still have to do the show up on time for meetings and balance your checkbook. But you can sort of choose to flex your style and make sure you're paying attention where you need to. Also, you'll be able to use each other as resources. This is a great group. You have a lot of resource on this council, and I was talking to Adam and Mirabai about that earlier, that how they can be great resources to each other just based on their emergenetics profiles. So just for a moment, because I know about the long meetings you all hold and hours of hard brain work that you do, I wanted to just talk for a minute at the beginning of this about our brains. They're kind of amazing. They have hundreds of billions of neurons with thousands and thousands of connections. And when we learn, we make new connections. But when you really look at it, it's about 2% of our total body weight, and yet it uses up 1/5 of our oxygen and 1/4 of our energy. Because of that, one of its main jobs is to conserve energy, and it's trying to do that a lot. So our brain is often trying to find ways to make a quick decision, pull information up. Oh, I've seen this problem before. I don't really need to think through it. I know what the right answer is. And a lot of the shortcuts that our brain takes, forming habits, handing stuff off to our subconscious, it's great and serves us well. But when you really need to make important decisions together and build good problem-solving, critical thinking skills, then you need your brain at your best. So if you just read this that I have in front of you right now, what you'll notice is that you can read it and you can make sense out of it. And in fact, the longer you go through it, the more sense it makes, the easier it becomes to read, because our brains will adapt. And as long as the first and last letter of the word are in the right place, then our brain sees the word as a whole instead of the individual letters. And in fact, if you try to read it phonetically, it would be much harder. So that's just an example of shortcuts that it's taking for us. I'm not going to make you do brain gym exercises right now, I promise. But there are some things that you can do when you notice that we've passed the 90-minute mark and we need to keep going, and I need to wake my brain up a little, because research shows you can't really be at your best after 90 minutes without some sort of a little break. And there's actually a book Gail Browning has put together. She's one of the, Gail Browning and Wendell Williams are the two that created EMERGENETICS, that is called Brain Gym Exercises. And I wouldn't recommend getting up and doing that move in the middle of a council meeting.
I don't know, I kind of like to see that.
You know, Heather is going to demonstrate for us right now. But there are some things that you can do that are a lot more subtle, even if it's just standing up and stretching and taking a break, that will help a lot when you can't get away. So these are the things that we're going to talk about. There are 4 thinking preferences, and there are 3 behavioral preferences. I'm going to go through and talk about all of them. The reason that those purple arrows, the purple is where the behaviors are noted, the reason that they go around the outside of that circle is just to symbolize and remind you that people experience you through your behaviors. They see your behaviors before they ever get to what your thinking is all about. Okay? So this is what you get. When you answer all of those questions on the survey online, it's charting you on that bar graph, the blue, green, red, yellow bar graph that's in the middle of the page. So on your individual results, wherever you lie on that graph, that's what the percentile you are at in relation to the general population. So if you're at 40, for example, that means 60% of the population uses more of that color or has a preference for more of that color than you. If you're at 95, there is some of that going on in this room individually. That means only 5% of the population uses more of that, has more of a preference for that color than you. So that's what that means. Once you get charted there, then those are all added up and given a total. And dividing each one of those colors into the total then gives us a percentage for your brain, and that's what's represented by the circle. The circle represents your brain and how much of a preference it has in each of those colors. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So if you have a pie piece that's at 23% or more, then we would say you have a preference for that color, for that kind of thinking. Most people have a preference for 2 or 3 colors. Very rarely do we have single preference people. They exist. And even rarer is what we call a quad brain, somebody who has preference in all 4 colors. I know of at least one of those people that are in the room tonight. I only share EMERGENETICS results when I've gotten permission to, by the way. So I never share individual results unless someone's given me permission. But quad brain is, really sees and thinks through all these different perspectives, and so can really see things from a variety of perspectives. Can also be hard to land on a decision, you can imagine, if you have that. So I'm going to go through, and I'm going to start with the behaviors and just explain them quickly. Just interrupt me if you have any questions. These purple lines, this is not this is not a bar graph from less to more. It's divided into thirds, and you can see the label says first third, second third, and third third. Gets a little, you have to get used to speaking about it that way, but the reason for that languaging, it's the same amount of energy, it's just directed differently. So on the expressiveness scale, somebody who's first third expressive, they might be quieter in a meeting because they're very introspective. So they're completely engaged, just as a third third would be, but they're thinking, and they need to think and get their thoughts in order before they can speak. So they are likely not speaking quite as much because they have a lot going on internally. Whereas someone who's third third on this expressiveness is almost has to speak in order to think. And so they're speaking more because that's how they figure out where they're landing in their thoughts. And they might feel like they're asking you to join them in their stream of consciousness, and they kind of are, because they're saying, well, you know, let's see, if we go with this alternative, these kinds of things might happen. And on the other hand, if we go with that alternative, these kinds of things might happen. Somebody who's first third would do all that internally and then come out with a thoughtful, here's what I think we should do or not do. So think about, if you don't know your own profile yet, where you think you are on this scale. And any time we're in the second third, anybody who has between 34 and 66 on any of these three behaviors, that's a really flexible place to be. It depends on the context, depends on what we're talking about, who's in the room. I might show up more first third, I might show up third third, okay? But this is what you look like as a group. Percentage-wise, looking at the 9 of you. So one person is in the first third, and everybody else is evenly divided between third third, and second third. So what does that tell you?
Shockingly, elected officials like to talk.
Shockingly, Aaron, shocking. Yes. Yeah.
So one thing I'd encourage you to think about, not just with the expressiveness, but with several of the other things that Heidi's going to talk about, is how we may be making judgments about the motivations of our colleagues on council based on behaviors that are in fact driven by their emergenetics profiles. So sometimes when I do interviews with councils before retreats, people say, and then there's that Dave, and he just talks all the time, and that guy just wants to make sure no one else gets a minute to talk, because if they do, they're going to disagree with him, and he won't have it, so he never shuts up. When in fact, that might just be, he's a third third, and that's how he comes to his own conclusions, is by talking himself and the rest of the room through them. Similarly, a first third, if that person doesn't talk, sometimes we say that person's not engaged. That Aaron Brockett, he's just not paying attention. He doesn't give a crap. Why is he even on council if he's not going to participate? He waits until he has something to say, and then he says something really smart. So just be very mindful for all of these things, that they manifest as behaviors, and our interpretations of behaviors may be off.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Also, keep in mind that you might have to make adjustments based on that so that you do hear every voice, right? And somebody who's first third might need a little more time before they speak. If you're asking them a question or to come to a conclusion without giving them a little bit of space to put their thoughts together, that's very difficult. You might not get a response right away. But the people that are third third, you can still be third third by asking questions rather than sharing your thoughts too. So there is some balancing you can do if you need it, but pay attention and just to make sure you hear from everyone. So assertiveness is the next one. Assertiveness is about, it's different than the skill of assertiveness. When we look at assertiveness as a skill, we're looking at, are you able to put a stake in the ground about what you think is important in a way that doesn't generate defensiveness in other people? Here it's a preference for how you approach the things that you do. So first third comes in, they're probably going to match whatever pace that is being set by the meeting that they're in or by the group, and they're pretty easygoing about it. Third is driving more, so wanting to get it done, really feeling like getting their voice out. So you think about when you have third expressive matched with third assertive, you're probably going to, if that person has an idea and an opinion, you'll hear it. You don't have to wonder what they're thinking. It isn't about who gets stuff done and who doesn't. Everybody gets stuff done. This is the way that you get it done. Okay, so I'll show you where you are as a group on this one. So tell me what you see when you look at that. Adam.
Sure, I'll assert myself here. We're pretty evenly split.
It's
across the
awesome.
board.
Exactly. So if those were numbers of people with 9 of you, it's 2, 3, and 4, right? Nice range. You're across this. That's a great thing. It's not always an easy thing. So as Heather was talking, we have a tendency to interpret other people based on our own preferences and styles. But with this kind of information, you can keep that in check. And it's this tells me that if you're spending a little bit too much time on something, those people that are over on the third are going to feel it and might help get things going a little bit. The people that are at first, third might keep you from rushing decisions. So if you figure out how to work well together, you got some great balance here. I just think this is, sorry, I keep hitting the mouse and I shouldn't. I want to show you this because I think it's a great display. Thank you, Heather. Keep it away from me. Yeah.
Is there anything in the last 2 charts that, as Aaron said, that is at all surprising, given the nature of the job and the nature of the people who attempt to get the job?
From my perspective, no. I don't see anything really surprising. A little bit on the assertiveness, maybe. Yeah, I might have anticipated more on the second, third, but I can't tell you that with any kind of what we expect to see because I don't know what the profile of a typical elected official is. I don't have that data, but there isn't a profile that says this is what it takes to be an elected official or this is what it takes to do a good job on city council. The most I could say about that in terms of emergenetics is having a well-rounded profile altogether gives you your best shot. It's a whole emergenetics team is very good, yeah.
And I think what I would add is I've probably seen councils, both functional and dysfunctional, with a wide variety of distributions. It's not necessarily true that a council that had a whole bunch of third expressives and third assertives is dysfunctional. They're just different. And similarly, it's not as if everyone was first, third assertive and first, third expressive, there's all sunshine and kittens there either. It's a different kind of dynamic for sure, but all the groups are different irrespective of how they show up in those pre-graphs.
So this is just a demonstration of what it looks like to show up as first, third assertive, second, third assertive, third assertive. But their noses all line up, so they get there, right? Like Heather was saying, different groups take on different styles together and different personalities. We've known since, the 1930s, 1940s with Rosabeth Cantor's work that diversity always leads to better decisions. When you have diverse thinking and behaving and diversity, she looked at biorhythms and all sorts of interesting things, and it always leads to better decisions with one caveat, and that is that you have to figure out how to work well together. So you have to figure out how to have a process that allows for that, those voices all to be heard. So it's good to have. You can function well no matter what your profile is on the emergenetics. It doesn't dictate success as long as you use the awareness you have to adjust and flex your behaviors and thinking. So flexibility, the willingness to accommodate the thoughts and actions of others. Really, when I look at flexibility, I prefer to think about first, third is somebody who likes to work on one thing, get it completed, and move on to the next thing. It is certainly able and willing to multitask, what we call multitask when it's needed. But if they could just be in their happy place, they'd be working on one thing at a time and then moving on to the next thing. And also when you reach a decision and being very open to ideas and thoughts of other people, but once we reach a decision, when I'm first, third of flexibility, that's a decision, and now I'm ready to go forward with it, and I kind of expect that that's what we're going forward with. Third, if they're only working on one thing at a time, they have a hard time feeling like they're adding value. They'd like to work on multiple things at once. That is what stimulates them and keeps them from getting bored. And, you know, when they reach a decision, it's more of a draft, probably. And they're kind of thinking of, well, yeah, we'll land here for now. It's open to adjustments. And, you know, if you put a process in place and it works really well, first third is excited that you've figured it out, and now we can run that process the next time because we know that it works. Third says, oh, that's awesome. What can we do to shake it up for next time and try something different to see if we can make it even better? So there's a difference with that. And again, remember the second third is always, it just depends. They show up differently in different situations. So there you are again. And again, that nice distribution, right? Which I'm saying is awesome, but I'm not going to tell you that it's easy. It's not easy for you, but it's great to have if you can remember and figure it out and adjust with each other. What questions do you have on the behaviors?
I have a math question.
Okay. Did I do something wrong?
Does somebody straddle a third, maybe, between the second
Did I
and third?
screw something up on that?
Well, yeah. Somebody got spread across all the thirds, I guess.
So thank you for finding that out. And, you know, I set my papers down right before we started somewhere, so I can't look up what that's supposed to be. Yeah, but we are missing someone. Oh, we need to know where they are. That's important.
They're just spread across thirds, I think.
Yeah, we cut somebody in
How's
half.
that up to?
We cut somebody in half. I don't have an answer for that, though.
The analytical amongst us are perturbed.
I wonder if there's somebody that was right on, I wonder if there's someone that was right on the border. That I'll have to look that up.
Let's not get too hung up on this.
But the analytical person to me would observe it as the
I'm just
person got
saying,
spread
Bob,
across all three, though.
If I didn't know you, I would say, okay, we got some blue going on in the room right now. So think about this for a minute. Let's just say you're all going to go to lunch somewhere, and 8 of you want to go to an Italian restaurant, 1 of you wants to go to a Thai restaurant. Just use that scenario for a minute. If the person that wants to go to the Thai restaurant has this behavioral profile, how's that conversation about where we're going to lunch going to go? Not going to Thai. They probably aren't going to Thai, yeah. And you may never know, actually, Jane, that they want Thai because they don't want to make waves. They're not feeling super strong about it, enough maybe to assert their voice about it, but they don't really want Thai. And anything else? They'll probably go because,
They're going to be mad
they might be mad. Why do you say that?
because they're not open to change.
Well, the flexibility thing, they want their Thai. They're probably going to figure out how to get Thai food. They might have it for dinner, though. You know, they might do that. When I look at this profile, though, I think, you know, I'm not sure that person's all excited about going out to lunch with 9 people. So they might make up an excuse why they can't make it, and they go get takeout Thai food and go sit back at their desk and eat it all by themselves. I don't know. What about this profile? How's that conversation go if that's the person that wants Thai?
More like Thai food or nothing?
I mean, it kind of looks like it, doesn't it? You're going to hear about it, high assertiveness, but you're not going to hear a lot about it. So it'll probably be a pretty direct, concise statement. I think so. Mary, you know, in fact, if they're driving the van, they might not say a word. It's just, you're not going to end up at the Italian restaurant. You'll all kind of wonder what happened, right?
I think my question, because I look at this and I even look at mine, if we're talking about Thai food, I mean, I suppose maybe you just illustrating and
I'm just
doing
illustrating, but-
examples because, I mean, Thai food, maybe someone who's assertive is not going to care where we go to eat. Maybe they'll care about other things, right?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, it may not be high on the list of things that are quite important in my life. Yeah, good point. What about this one? Well, they might, yeah. So, I mean, remember, they can flex back and forth. I would say that whatever the conversation is, the arguments pro and con could change their mind. They could change their mind, right? They're not. I think they probably will go wherever the group wants to go. They'll engage a little in conversation, but they really could have their mind changed by whatever the conversation ends up being. Oh. What do you think?
Yeah, you've got a fight on your hands.
Yeah. So think about, though, what Heather was talking about with behavioral preferences. This is someone who's thinking out loud about it, feels pretty strongly that they want Thai, doesn't really want to change their mind about that, right? Because they've kind of already decided that they want Thai. So they might come across pretty strong without noticing or intending to come across that strong. But it can almost be a, hey, if you all want to have lunch together as a council, we're going to Thai food. It's the only way that's going to happen. That's how it can feel to other people, right? It's now matched with someone else who also is third on the first two and third on flexibility. Yeah, you got to fight on your hands. And the others of you can just sit back and watch it happen. How about this person? The only difference now is third flexibility. Adam.
They want to get things done. They want to get them done quickly, and they don't necessarily care how it ends up happening.
Yeah, they're willing to go wherever, but they like that conversation about where we should go to lunch. They kind of want to have that conversation, and they might keep having that conversation all through lunch, right? Because the expressiveness and assertiveness. And again, if there is more than one person, that conversation probably will continue all through lunch, because you'll go back and ask about all the Yelp, ratings about it, or what else, other places that, which one's closer to where we are and stuff. So anxious to get going, but I enjoy the conversation and the mental debate. Did that help illustrate a little bit for you so you have good understanding? You can think about where you are on all three of those behaviors. Again, if you haven't already looked, if I were in your shoes, I would have already looked at mine. So now I'm going to talk about the thinking preferences pretty quickly. Originally, when Gail and Wendell were doing this, they built on research that was done by Sperry and Herman of our triunal brain, the 3 levels of brain, and then left brain, right brain. And so the diagram sort of fits that. So on the left, we have more muted colors, the analytical, which is blue, and the structural, which is green. This is convergent thinking on the left. So if you have all these different bits of information or data points, you would look at them, and convergent thinking would say, since this is what we have in front of us, therefore this is what we know. It's sort of like Sherlock Holmes solving a mystery. I figure out all the bits of data, and then I put them together to identify what we know. On the other side, what we used to call right brain thinking, and I know that we still do use left and right brain thinking, but it's pretty obsolete now with everything we know about our brains and our corpus callosum and how much more complicated it is. But the conceptual and social is divergent thinking. Conceptual yellow, social red. The same data points. You might be looking at the same information and same data points, but where your brain goes with it is, oh, okay, so what else might be possible? If this is what we know, what are some relationships I can think about that we haven't really thought about before in this data? But it's going out from what we have. Okay, so then abstract thinking, the top half, sky colors, and they did this intentionally because our brains remember colors and you can use colors really well, but the blue and the yellow are sky colors. So, for example, analytical being both abstract and convergent, it's the 30,000-foot view, not the detail view. 30,000-foot view and convergent. I want to know that we have good objective data that says we're doing the right thing here. So I want to know that our forests are healthy. If I have a preference for blue. I'm not very interested in hearing the details about the chemical composition of the soil. That's in the weeds, right? And blue is abstract. If I were going to learn how to play golf and I had a preference for blue thinking, I would probably look for the best book, ask people what is the best book to read, and read a book about it. Conceptual is divergent and abstract. So that's the 30,000-foot view. What is the cool new thing we could be doing? What's the plan look like for our new civic center or Central Park? What are the possibilities? If I wanted to learn how to play golf, I would grab a club and grab a ball and go out and start swinging, see what happens, and kind of adjust from there. It's not where plans get implemented, it's where they get dreamed up. Does that all make sense? So now when we get down to the green and red, more of the earth colors, this is where detail happens. Structural is detail about process. So I do want to know about the chemical composition of the soil. I do want a time-bound agenda for the meeting that I'm going to. Green is where the plan that might get put together in yellow, this is where it can be implemented. This is where there's clarity about what are the resources we need to make this happen? How much time is it actually going to take realistically in order to do this? I'm just looking at the stuff behind your heads over there, Mary and Adam, and there's a very big board, right, full of different sizes of circles, and I'm assuming they're projects or things that need to happen in 2020. And actually getting them organized together and making sure that we can do these things. That's what happens in green. So we love our green people, and you could use a little more of it probably on this council, just because I've seen your group brain. We'll talk about that in a minute. Social is not where's the party. It's more relational. It is detail also, but instead of detail about process, it's detail about people. It's where that empathy bone is, but it's also when I'm thinking through things, if I have a preference for red, I am looping through, well, how's that going to impact others? What are these people going to think and feel about that? Do we have the right brains at the table to make this decision? Who else do we need to include in this? So it is that enjoy working with others. If you don't have a lot of preference for red, that does not mean that you don't like people. Okay, at all. I've had people actually ask me that. You'd be very, very skilled and very good with people, and it's not maybe the first place your brain goes. And doing a whole lot of navigating people that are difficult to navigate would make you very tired if you didn't have a preference for red. You could do it well, but it would make you tired. Okay, questions about these? All right, so here's analytical, and I'm going to show you now what percentage of this group has a preference for analytical thinking. Remember, this is both convergent and abstract, data-driven and rational, but keep the details in the abstract. Don't put them in the body of the paper you're asking me to read. Okay. So 5 of the 9 of you have a preference for analytical thinking. You can think about if you think you're one of those 5. People that have a preference for analytical thinking, they like to see things written down. They like to see things. They want to know that they're from credible sources, but they tend to resonate better if they can see it. This was a study that was done. This is not one person's brain that you see up there. It's actually 32 people. Their brain all kind of averaged together. But this was a study that was done where people were shown scary pictures, frightening pictures of faces and frightening scenes. And then their brains were being measured. And the red that you see is the amygdala lighting up, which is, I often call our emotional center. But it sits on either side of the brainstem up here. And it's what gets triggered when we have the fight or flight response. It is what releases cortisol into our system to help us focus and fight the woolly mammoth or whatever it is that we need to fight. It is intended to be in our bodies for a very short period of time because it shuts off our growth. It shuts off our immune systems because it puts all of our attention into whatever this threat is that we need to face. When people first, before they looked at the pictures, sniffed under their noses oxytocin, not Oxycontin and not oxycodone. Oxytocin is it's a brain chemical. It's a hormone that our brain releases, and it releases this hormone when we feel safe, when we're in a situation where we feel psychological safety, et cetera. Then we have more oxytocin flooding through our systems. When people had oxytocin in their systems, the reaction that they had to looking at the scary scenes you can see was much, much less. Has all sorts of implications for the importance of building trust, et cetera, in teams and in workplaces and stuff. So anyway, that's for the 5 of you that have a lot of blue in your thinking. The structural, the green, practical, predictable, not only wants to have those plans, but is usually really good at putting plans together and timelines together, I've found. So how many of you think you have a preference for green? If you don't mind saying, awesome, yeah. You need these 2 people. You're very happy that they're on the council because it's not easy being green in this group, right? There's not a lot. You may find that they're holding feet to, keeping your boots on the ground and kind of asking for some of the specifics about things. It can feel frustrating, especially to yellow conceptual thinking, because let me have my big dreams, and what are you talking about? But it's super important to make sure that you look through the green lens, because that's how you know if what you're asking for is a huge amount of work and effort versus something that fits in with stuff that's already on the work plan, et cetera. So thank your green thinkers when you meet them. Social, again, relational. I've talked a lot about it and been intuitive about people. You're thinking constantly about how someone else is being impacted, et cetera. Check this out. Is that surprising? Is that part of why you're here, you think? What drove you to want to be in the position that you're in? Being of service? Yeah. Pretty cool. We're pretty lucky. We being those of us who live in the city. But yeah, that's great. That's probably where the passion to be of service for others comes from. People that have a lot of red sometimes use a different language. When they have an idea or a thought about something, they might say, oh, my gut's telling me this is what we should do. I have this feeling. How does that sound to those of you who have a lot of blue preference when someone says? And you say, why do you think we should do that? And someone says, oh, my gut's just saying. Not the greatest thing for someone who has the analytical thinking, because they want to know what's the objective data that supports what you're talking about. But people that have a lot of red, they have really a visceral sensation in their gut. We all have this, by the way. All of us have more neurons in the lining of our guts than we do in our entire spinal column. So they're there and they get activated by our brain and by our thought that we have. So everybody has this sort of brain-gut connection, but people with a lot of red tend to feel it viscerally and sometimes use that language. Yellow might say, this idea just flew into my brain. I don't know where it came from. But red tends to say, oh, I have a gut feeling, and blue wants the logic. So when I'm coaching people that I know are going to be speaking to someone that has a strong preference for blue and they have a strong preference for red, I just suggest that they listen to their guts. It's telling you something that's in your brain, but maybe pause long enough to understand the logic of what you're about to say, because it's there. It's just not the first thing that pops up for someone with a red preference. And then speak from that, because it'll make it easier for the person that has a blue preference to hear what you're saying. Conceptual. What do you think about this one? Where do you think you are as a group? Do you know each other well enough to guess? 50%, 75%, 25% of you? How many of you have a preference? No. 2/3? How well does Bob know this group?
He's quite analytical.
Oh, pretty well. 78%, right? So I'm gonna put this up here, and I know that it doesn't add up to 100. So just to those of you who have blue, look at that and say, Heidi, no, that can't work. But this is how many of you have a preference in each of these colors. And remember, most of us have more than one preference. We have 2 or 3. What do you notice when you look at that? What do you notice about you?
So, yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it's a group that dwells more on ideas than on the details of implementation.
You're a little more top-heavy, right? What else is even more extreme? Yeah, great diversity. I think that's what you were saying initially, Mary. What else?
Well, she said divergent, I think.
Yeah, is that what you said? I heard diverse. You said divergent. Yes, you're very red-yellow, right? There's a lot going on there, which is lovely and wonderful. So this is...
Hold on.
Yeah.
Question?
Yeah,
Mark.
how do you reconcile being both analytical and conceptual? I mean, it seems to me that they're covering 2 different landscapes.
Yeah,
Is that
it's very common.
multi-talented, or that some people are not fully aware of where their actual behaviors lie?
Well, so these are thinking preferences. So it isn't necessarily how you're showing up behaviorally, right? It's the way where your brain is going. And so they are different spaces. They're both the 30,000-foot view. A lot of people have I think a lot of you, in fact, maybe more of you have the conceptual social, but have the analytical conceptual. And it's a 30,000-foot sort of planning kind of a thinking, but both, do we know that we're doing the right thing? We have the data, the objective data that shows it, and are we being true to the vision that we have and the values that we have? That would be the yellow. So it's an umbrella over both of those things. Yeah. I'll tell you, though, what can get tricky is the polar opposites, analytical and social together. So you have an informed head with a warm heart. Right? They're very different. And then the yellow and the green, complete opposite, divergent and abstract versus convergent and concrete. And sometimes when that's in one person, it's not necessarily an easy brain to live with, because dreaming very big and then having the green come in and say, oh, get real, get your feet on the ground. Get your head out of the clouds. But this is someone who can both come up with these wonderful ideas and implement them. So the great news, though, Mark, is you don't have to have it all in one person, because if you have it in the team, you got it, right? This is not you, but I want you to look at these goals. This was a team that Gail Browning worked with in 2015. And tell me if you think about, I'm going to show you your brain as if you were one brain, as if you were one person, what it looks like. But first I want to show you this team. What color do you think they're missing when you look at those goals? And I know they're not all great, smart goals, but is there something missing if this is a leadership team? Red. There's nothing in there about employee development, right? Or something that would look at people management. And here's their group profile, right? They did not notice that in them, in themselves. They had no idea that they were missing that. And this maybe is trying to force some of the stuff into some of their goals into the different colors. But yeah, they were really completely missing the red. The thing is, that's okay as long as they know that about themselves, so that before they finish setting their goals, they can say, hey, now we need to get into the red part of our brain. What do we have in terms of goals for employee development or, supervisory goals, et cetera? Well, here you are. This is you as if you were one brain. Tell me about yourself.
Well, thank goodness we have a staff. otherwise we'd run amok.
Yeah, so you rely heavily on that, the organization and structure, et cetera, right?
Which is what our Saturday at the retreat's going to all be about, because we did create 12 years worth of work, and now staff's going to help us.
I did notice that.
I'm sorry. I'm just saying, this is the list of all the things, right?
Yeah.
Plus those.
Plus the other thing, yeah. So
That go on top of that. I don't mean to chuckle.
I guess the thing that I would encourage you to think about, Bob, is not just thank goodness you have staff, but if you imagine being staff and seeing this profile of the group of leaders, right? I don't know for sure, but that might strike fear into the heart of a city manager, which says a whole lot of, I'm going to have a lot of ideas here and a lot of concern about how what the city is doing is landing and affecting the residents, which are all the things that you should be thinking about, but maybe some limited awareness about what it takes to do all the things that council has when they say, what if we did this, or we could do that better? Then that falls, if you don't have a lot of green on your team, that falls to staff to be the ones to say, whoa, council, y'all need to slow down. Hey, that is a cool thing. It'd be neat if we could do that, but we're doing these 17,000 other things. And just imagine what it's like to be staff and have to say that to not just one boss, but to 9 of them. And really important to be mindful of what that lack of green means, not just for the workload of staff, but how they have to interact with you and what a challenge that might be.
Good thing is we have a lot of red, so that although we know we're overloading staff, we are empathetic about
But you
it.
feel real bad about it.
I feel badly about it.
You may not be aware you're doing it, but you would feel really badly if you were aware that you were doing it, right?
There's guilt about it.
Mary?
However, I see several people put down hard stop 10 or 10:30.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So what's interesting, Mary, is what I find is that it's the folks with a lot of green in their profiles who are the ones in the meeting who say, this is a super cool conversation, but I can't help but notice we're already 2 hours past agenda. Mm-hmm. And so those are the ones that want to be done by 10. And that make sure that you do and push for it. Everyone might say it'd be super great if we were done by 10, but we can't stop until I say my thing. It's the green people that are always going, but. So without someone, particularly that if your green person is not one of your third assertive people, they're going to sit there and fester about how you're off agenda and you're clearly going to go past 10, but they're not going to say, people, come on, could we wrap this up? It's getting real late. The lack of green is going to show up in your meetings in a lot of really interesting ways.
I think the behaviors are going to drive some of that too. Look at the behaviors. Where do you hang? You're not hanging right in the middle, averaging each other out. Where are you? Can't really see the numbers, but you can see about where it is.
Yeah,
right?
we have on our tables
Oh, yeah,
too.
that's right. You have the handout. Perfect. Thanks, Bob.
On the high side.
Yeah, on the high side, on both assertiveness and expressiveness, like when Heather was just saying, but let me say my one thing. There's probably a lot of energy in the room that I want to say my one thing or my 2 things or my 10 things. Yeah, so meeting management and time management around what we really can accomplish and paying attention, the paying close attention to the time falls in the green. And so the people that do bring green to the table, if you rely on them to do that all the time, they're going to be so grumpy.
Adam, did you want to say something?
No.
Okay.
Trying to move this along.
He's our green.
Adam's feeling it. He's feeling it. So here's another view of you, and you also have this as a handout. So without profiles or names attached, the dots are the individuals. So what does this bit of information give you that's different than what I just showed you?
It shows the exact distribution.
You get to see the range. You've got some pretty wide ranges. Look at green. Can you imagine being the one person out there? Because most of you hang together in that first third, right? But then there's 1 second, third, and 1, well, I shouldn't be saying thirds, but most of you hang together in the not so much. And then you've got the others that are hanging together. This is looking at the percentiles, those bar graphs. Someone's all the way at probably, 95th or something. So that's awesome to have. You've got the perspective here. You've got that resource on this team. Better yet, for all of you to remember that you got to try to bring green to the table. And in terms of the behaviors, one of the things I've noticed with ranges, that's where it tends to matter the most. That's where it's the hardest, because of what Heather said at the very beginning of all of this, where we're interpreting others based on where we are. And if I'm first, third expressive, and I'm interacting with someone who's third, I just assume they don't really care what I have to say because they never let me get a word in edgewise, and they never really stop talking. And they're probably looking at me saying, man, Heidi doesn't even care about this. She's not offering any opinions whatsoever. And really, it's just that we're operating from our preferences. So that can be where we bump into each other the most. But if you figure it out, that's awesome. So if you haven't has anyone not looked at their results yet? Oh, Mark, you just made my day. So before you do, think about what you think your preferences are and where about you think you are. And then open up your folders, those of you who got them for the first time, and the very first sheet is your individual profile. Your preference for what you want to do when you first get things like this back is, written up there. Whether you want to talk about it or write about it or think about it or kind of analyze it. So any comments or questions? So I'm hoping that means you get it. As you read through, there's 4 of you that got profiles tonight, and I think for 3 of you it's brand new. As you read through yours, it should really resonate and sound right. And if it doesn't, reach out and have a conversation with me. And even if it does, but you just want to have the conversation because you're third expressive, that's great. I'd be happy to connect with you and do that, okay? You've got a handout, and there are questions that I think Lynette sent out to you earlier, but there are 3 questions for you to dig into about your own profile. And I'd like you to use that to prepare for the interview you're going to have with one other person between now and the retreat. So you've been paired up. You know who your pairs are, right? Mm-hmm. How do you do that with 9 people now? I'm curious.
Jane gets to play.
Yay. Okay, good. So between now and the retreat, take some time, first of all, to answer those questions for yourself, because it'll help you dig a little more into emergenetics and your specific profile. There are a number of resources. There's an app. I always hesitate to say there's an app, but there's actually a really good app called EMERGENETICS Plus. And you can get on that. You can get your profile. You can request. It's sort of like you can ask other people if they will let you see their profile. And then it gives you all these job aids and beta so that you can, boy, Heidi, you're about to meet with Rachel. And Heidi, here's Rachel's profile. So when you speak to her, do these things so that she can hear you better. And then, Rachel, you're about to meet with Heidi, and here's her profile. So when you meet with her, do these things. Stay high level or get in the weeds or whatever it is. It gives you some nice, but it'll also help you interpret your results better. And then when you interview each other, think about sharing what you want to share about yourself, and you might get off the page a little. It doesn't have to all be about emergenetics, okay?
I'm going to channel the 4% structural that I can, and ask you a question about process. After we meet with each other and compare our profiles, and maybe answer some of these questions, at the retreat, are we meant to kind of introduce each other and reflect on what our partners' profiles say?
Yes, thanks for asking that. So the vision is for your partner at the retreat, you will show up and you will say, hi, I'd like to introduce my friend Aaron Brockett. Aaron's profile looks something like this. The way that Aaron anticipates that showing up on the dais or in his work with council or with staff or with the community might be something like this. Some of the things that Aaron says he's struggling with that relate to his profile are this, this, and this, and this, however that shows up in your conversation. If you use the questions from the sheet that Heidi gave you as part of that, those things should come up. The other thing I would personally encourage you to think about as before you meet each other, guess what the other person's profile is? Because it will tell you something about how you've already been coming to some conclusions and judgments based on what you already know. And so an example that I will tell you is, those of you who have known me for many years might presume that I am third assertive. I'm real bossy, y'all. You'll learn this. It's very annoying. I am, in fact, third assertive. It is not my job to be first, third assertive. It is my job to be third assertive, and that's how I show up at work. In my actual life, not my preference. So interesting to think about how the behaviors show up, what conclusions we draw about them, and whether they are in fact consistent with our default our default preferences, which is what the emergenetics tool will tell you. It's real fun. Does that help answer your question, Bob?
It does, thank you.
Then please make sure also that before you introduce someone, you make sure that the things you're going to share about them and their profile, that they're okay with that. Because it'd be great if you could talk with each other in a little more open way, but what gets shared, people may have different comfort about what's shared about them. So just double check that when you finish your interviews or your conversations.
You have a lot of red, Heidi?
I have a lot of red. What else? My profile. We have to stop though. But you are my people. Your brain, your team brain is pretty much my brain.
You have a structural problem too?
Hence, we're 4 minutes over time. Yeah.
Not mine.
Thanks
Mine
so
doesn't look
much.
like hers.
Great.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thanks so much, Heidi.
Okay. Thanks, Heidi. Okay, let's move on to boards and commission letters. And in deference to the Greens in the room, we're going to try to keep this to 75 minutes. Do we know how many of these do we have altogether, Lynette? Do we have exactly 18? Okay. So the analytical me, so it says 75 divided by 18 is about 3 minutes each. So let's try to keep it to 3 minutes per board. Well, 2 to 3. I'm trying to be flexible. And we're going to do this alphabetical? By board? We'll do them any way that's easiest for you. Rachel, you're up.
In the room.
Okay. Next one, we'll come back. Junie, tell us about BOZA. By the way, for those of you who are relatively new to us, we've been doing this for a number of years, but one thing we're doing differently this year is we had to present our summaries ahead of time, because invariably what was happening is people were reading the letters real time and summarizing them at this meeting. So thank you all for summarizing them in advance.
Yeah, most of us.
Okay. So basically, that's just reading what I...
However you'd like to present it.
So we were asked to provide the top 3 priorities for 2021 work plan, and I will be reading the first one for BOZA. So it's increase administrative review authority, give staff more discretion for administrative approvals in order to streamline BOZA review process. Authorize staff to make decisions in certain cases, such as by rights improvements, building repairs, or replace an existing element that does not meet current setbacks without input from BOZA.
Great, and as we go through these things, I think it's going to be maybe helpful for us to the extent you have comments, to add commentary on what we're hearing from the boards and commissions that might impact our work plan.
Okay.
That one may not have triggered anything, but as we think of these things.
So the next one is the ADU ordinance data collection, collecting data around the accessory dwelling units, unit application, and review processes in order to understand barriers to application. Currently, data is not being gathered from potential applicants who do not follow through with the application process. Through data collection, we hope to understand the economic barriers, whether the application process is too costly, and procedural barriers, whether the length, cost, and complexity of the process present a barrier. So the third priority is including BOZA in large home and large lot code zoning modification and park review, and variance criteria review based on section 9-23 I1C, and compatible development discussion for ADUs. So BOZA welcomes the opportunity to offer their thoughts on this possible zoning modification for large home and large lots. BOZA welcomed the opportunity to offer their thoughts on parking reviews for certain properties the allowance of parking in the landscape setbacks for properties with ADUs creates an inconsistent standards. BOSA welcomed the opportunity to offer their thoughts and variance criteria review based on Section 9-2, 3I1C, review the standard application for the conservation of space legally constructed by an owner prior to the ordinance. BOSA welcomed the opportunity to offer recommendation on compatible development for ADU. The only variance allowed for ADU ordinance is floor area. With the anticipation of new ADU application based on conversion of existing space rather than new construction, BOSA would suggest flexibility on the size, location of a parking space, the amount of private open space, setbacks, heights of detached unit built prior to the ordinances, etc. So the next question was, how do you suggest connect back to the work of your specific board and commissions? They did not respond, or I did not find the answer in their letter. Are there additional boards or commissions that should weigh in on those issues? They did not answer that question either. So the next one is Open Space and Mountain Parks Board of Trustee, OSBT. What do you think the city's top 3 priorities should be for 2020-2021 work plan? OSBT will recommend council for year 2021 budget with the master plan priorities to ensure that revenue projection reflect the recent tax measure, purchase of a conservation easement on Long's Garden, focus on for year 2021 master plan priorities with emphasis on deferred maintenance and reducing impact from increased visitation on open space and mountain parks land, minimizing impact of visitation and identifying challenges to communities, 120 years investment in open space, submit the master plan funding priorities targeted for 2021, include 1, ecosystem conservation and habitat restoration, including non-native weed control, extensive repair and maintenance of the existing trails, reducing atmospheric carbon through active sequestration efforts on agricultural croplands, and 4, providing essential environmental education on topics that promote understanding of our role in healthy living and livable environment. OSMP and OSBT ongoing involvement in the South Boulder Creek Control Project, including possible disposal of OSMP land for construction of project features. OSBT expect to review updated project information in March or April 2020 and provide feedback to council. OSBT does not have a schedule yet for consideration of possible land disposal or other board actions. OSBT recommend to council to address conflict between prairie dogs and OSMP irrigated agriculture north of J Road between Highway 36 and Diagonal. Prairie dog level on numerous open space and mountain parks irrigated agricultural properties have created a conflict between the city prairie dogs and agricultural policies and prevent OSMP from fully meeting charter purposes. We recommend commencing an expedited OSMP-led process with appropriate outreach to evaluate whether, where, and how to use lethal control to address these problems. Items for council information. These three issues don't need to be council priorities, but it is possible that one or more will generate requests for council consideration. Completion of Wonderland Lakes. Following input from the public and council, OSMP substantially revised the process and goals for integrated insight planning at Wonderland Lakes. Second, round of consideration of options and public feedback currently underway. Public discussion of proposed final option will occur in January through March 2020, with board recommendation to staff in April. Completion of Gun Barrel Hill. A public planning process was begun in January 2019 to explore ways to protect important grassland nesting bird habitat while providing enhanced visitor experience. Completion of Gerbhardt. This planning process began in fall of 2018 with the goal of protecting rare and threatened wildlife and plant species and their habitat along South Boulder Creek, Bobolink Trail, while providing access to trail along this corridor. Final concept for SBT recommendation to staff will be presented in January 2021. How do you suggest, and the next question was, how do you suggest connect back to the work of your specific board and commission? There was no answer to that question. Are there additional board or commissions that should weigh in on those issues? There was no answer either.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Mirabai, I think you're up.
All right, I have Environmental Advisory Board, and to their answer to the first question is transportation, land use, resilience, and new environmental stresses. To answer question number 2, it's transportation, air quality, energy, and emissions. That's A. B is land use, impacts around GHG emissions, ecosystems. C is resilience, urban heat island, air quality, wildfire, flood, etc. Answer to question 3, A, transportation, and it is tab. B is land use, and that is planning board, OSBT, housing, landmarks, and C is resilience, which is RAB and OSBT. Library Commission didn't answer any of the questions, so I just summarized. So they approved funds are helping with expansion of volunteer services, bilingual youth services, updates to the interior of the Reynolds Library branch, and an additional $700,000 for the North Boulder Library branch building. Great success can create increased demands, but success does not mean they meet their funding needs, so they need to grow to meet the community's vision. So then their unfunded costs is $100 million shortfall for the NOBO branch, and many operating and facility costs not included in the 2021 budget. Need council's commitment for sustainable funding for the next generation, and creation of the library district. So that goes into spring submission of a November 2020 ballot, whether to create and fund a library branch or district, or simply whether to fund a library district. Their recommendation is that council and city leaders create a district by proclamation and begin negotiations of the IGA, then rely on the voters to determine the funding.
Great, thanks, Mirabai.
Thank you to the Beverage Licensing Authority's brevity. Council should at least maintain current staffing levels. We should focus on maintaining liquor compliance checks at usual historical numbers and frequency. And the BLA should be provided with additional support through the Boulder Police Department as supplied by the Alcohol Enforcement Officer. And I also appreciate the greater than or equal to current levels of service in that. That's awesome. As for the UCAMC, okay. That's University Hill. Who else knows it off the top of their head?
Management Commission. Access, no.
Management Commission.
Commercial Access Management Commission. Okay, here we go.
It's catchy.
Yes, it is. Request for a council liaison to be appointed to inform and support, this is a different one, University Hill General Improvement District. Yep, thank you, Aaron. Revitalization goals in conjunction with council priorities. I wonder why no one wants to join this one. It's move forward with the proposed Hill Hotel. Adequately fund much needed capital improvements to support safety and vitality of UGID. Increase safety on the Hill. This is my first time, I'm sorry. Increase safety on the Hill through improved lighting, alley enhancements, strategies to address transients, fund capital improvements supporting safety and revitalization of districts, including tree replacement, lighting repair and replacement, and alley enhancement. Designate the Boulder Police Department Hill team as an essential service to ensure adequate staffing for the Hill commercial and residential areas, and support additional staffing for Boulder Police Department's homeless outreach team, or HOT team. Support Hill Reinvestment Working Group efforts to create a more positive culture in the surrounding neighborhood to improve the vitality of the commercial district.
I was fortunate both in the brevity of the letters and the absence of tongue-twisting initials. The Design Advisory Board raised an interesting concept of advocating revision of the Energy Code to incorporate the concept of embedded energy impacts based on construction materials rather than focusing entirely on post-occupancy energy consumption. The current code is based entirely on operational energy consumption. They advocated significantly expanding the scope of what constitutes community benefit beyond affordable housing. They want to create more flexibility in permitted uses if community benefit is provided, and provide incentives beyond additional height or density in exchange for providing such benefits. The Water Resources Advisory Board wants to accelerate the repair and replacement of utility infrastructure because the existing pace of repair is not adequate to do so. I think they pointed out that at our current pace of funding, they have a backlog of 100 years worth of construction. They anticipate that to make any progress along these lines, an increase in water bills will be necessary. They do require some direction from Council on prioritizing all contemplated flood mitigation work, and this is beyond just CU South. They also request formulation of criteria to create such priorities in order to equitably provide flood protection throughout the city. And they request that Council establishes a clear direction by May 2020 for the CU South flood mitigation strategy. I guess I'll amen to that.
Both the Boulder Junction Commissions issued a joint letter, and you can see up there that they want us to focus on funding sources for transportation master plan with some very specific requests that were primarily focused on transit, on EcoPass, on certain bus routes that pass through the Boulder Junction area, bus rapid transit on Highway 119, and they also ask us to focus on micro-mobility options. Those two groups also ask us to look at public parking pricing within Boulder Junction and across the city, to continue to our work on evolving the neighborhood parking program. They asked for some capital improvement funds for some needs they believe that exist in the Boulder Junction area, specifically on bike shelters and signage. And they want us to have an emphasis on both affordable housing and affordable commercial opportunities in properties that are near Boulder Junction. We're wrapping up 30th and Pearl. I think we still have one more segment to address there, and then they encourage us to initiate our planning around the second phase of the transit village. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. They observed that there's been a big focus the last few years on access to parks and recreation program for youth. Without diminishing that emphasis, they would like additional focus on access for seniors and other underserved communities. They would like us to continue to work on climate action, particularly those three areas that I list up there. As one of the other speakers, I think it was Open Space, or one of the other boards indicated that the impact of transients on public spaces was presenting some challenges in the parks properties. And they also want us to step up our enhancement of our urban forests, particularly along the lines of diversity, given the Emerald ash borer impacts.
That would be me. Housing Advisory Board. So I summarized their letters, and the Housing Advisory Board's letter started out by outlining the list of accomplishments And so they focused on the 2018-2019 housing work plan. They made recommendations to council when council requested that. They sponsored 2 listening sessions, one on the affordable housing experience and the other one, how to raise money for permanently affordable housing. And they found that those were highly, highly successful and would actually like to continue on that, build on that momentum. They have a desired role that they outlined for us, and they would like to serve as a clearinghouse for housing-specific issues raised by the public. They would like to be a viable forum for housing issues to be filtered through to City Council, and they would like a role in both analysis and advocacy on pending housing issues at the state level, the legislature. For 2020, they have the following suggestions. Continue on items from the previous work plan, hold additional listening sessions, find a pilot project for tiny homes, an expedited review process for projects that provide affordable housing, expedited simplified review and approvals for middle income remodels and expansions. And I just want to note on this one that there was a similar recommendation from BOZA, so I'm wondering how we might be able to maybe extract some data and analyze and conceptualize some possible solutions there. And then continue as employer liaison, exploring partnerships for employee affordable housing. The Transportation Advisory Board, their priorities were to increase non-sales tax funding for transportation to achieve the Transportation Master Plan goals. Congestion and cordon, that doesn't make sense to me. I might have made a typo there. It's a cordon? Okay, cordon pricing, okay. A vehicle valuation tax, VVT as they refer to it, and increasing parking fees. They would like to reform public parking, assign parking management to transportation staff. And I recall this has come up prior, actually by City Council has come up in the past. Minimum parking requirements to maximum allowed, update or replace the neighborhood parking program, and that came up with UCAMC as well, I believe, and unbundle from ownership / residency. Curbside management to encourage non-single occupancy vehicle modes. Their priorities are to align the parking policies with established goals that cut across departments and work plans, and they outline several aspects of it, SOV trips, GHG reduction, and revenue generation and equity. Review and reform EcoPass and transit subsidies, yay, to align with transit and equity goals. Requests, they would like to see the city charter changed to allow for TAB to weigh in on land use issues. And they would like interaction with the boards listed there, with Planning Board, Housing Advisory Board, Human Relations Commission, Environmental Advisory Board, Downtown Management Commission, and any access district commissions developed citywide.
Did you have to skip me earlier when I went to have a coughing attack? Sorry. Okay, so my first is Human Relations Commission, and I did top 3 priorities that they listed. Number 1 is to implement the statutory non-discrimination protection. So they worked hard in the last year and leading up to that to pass a bias-motivated hate crimes ordinance, and so now it comes down to training law enforcement and prosecutors and enforcing it. And also we now have gender-inclusive language and municipal ordinances that pertain to sexual orientation and gender identity that are comparatively very strong. So again, that's just enforcement. Number 2 is a focus on housing, and they specifically listed manufactured, unhoused, and affordable. I won't read what's there, but that was their second, is focus on housing. Do you want me to read what's there? I can. It's fairly self-explanatory. Okay, so for manufactured, that's largely going to come down to state-level advocacy for the protections, and they also wanted a full-time employee for code enforcement dedicated to enforcement at manufactured housing here in Boulder. 2, for unhoused, focus on housing. It's an emphasis on compassion, and we need to look at additional emergency sheltering, daytime services, and also consider modifying the camping ban. And HRC noted that they did do some public engagement and feedback already on that note. And for number 3, affordable housing, we need to preserve the existing stock that we have and strategically ensure the future availability of affordable communities such as manufactured homes. Number 3 for their top 3 is prioritize inclusivity. So the racial equity resolution that we just passed and the police oversight task force. And we also need to address white spaces, which have historically served to exclude people of color. And we need to be more proactive in creating diverse and inclusive civic spaces. Number 2, recognize that affordable housing is not going to be the sole solution for inclusivity. There are people who can afford to live in Boulder right now and who choose not to live here because we are not seen and we are not acting as, or we are not welcoming and inclusive at this point. And number 3, promote Indigenous Peoples Day and issues and protection on state and federal levels in our advocacy efforts. My second board is landmarks, and so their top 3 are, number 1, incentivize the reuse of existing buildings. When we demolish a building, the construction waste and demolition is 2/3 landfill. Our climate commitment goals are not well met by currently allowing so much demolition and encouraging new construction. We also have embodied energy waste products when we do that. So if we reuse existing building, we are helping to meet our climate commitment goals. So looking at the last part of B, they want us to study embodied energy impacts. And I'm not sure if that's the same thing as embedded. I don't know those terms that well. So I learned in preparing this, embodied energy is the energy and resources cost that goes into creating or constructing a building. So when we demolish it, we forfeit that embodied energy that we had in building number 1. And so we need to study that and look at ways to, again, not create that waste. And their number 3 is to close the loopholes in demolition-related ordinances. So as is, you can sort of piecemeal or incrementally demolish a building gradually in a way that we would not allow it to be wholly demolished up front or changed, and that can result in the permanent loss of historic character. So they would like us to proactively close that loophole. Thank you.
I think that leaves me, and I failed to do my homework, so y'all can give me a low grade here, but I promise not to just read the letters that I was responsible for. I am ready to summarize. So I had the Arts Commission as my first board. They did neatly organize their letter into 5 priorities. So their first one is to increase the ongoing funding. They welcomed the $250,000 special facilities grant that we awarded in 2019 and are glad it is continuing, but feel like more resources are necessary. So they request that we continue to increase the financial support for Boulder's arts and culture organizations and the artists who make them up. Their second priority is additional funding for public art staff. They feel like the new 1% for art program is working extremely well and generating lots of projects, but the current workload of managing those projects is untenable, and our one public art manager is overloaded. So they are requesting a full-time assistant position that they feel is mission critical to continue our high-quality public art program. The third priority is to develop an expedited public art review and permitting process with lower fees. There have been some significant public art projects that have taken a great deal of extra time and extra money to implement, and they would like to see us make the permitting process much easier and not as expensive. The fourth priority is to add 2 commissioners to bring the number of their commissioners from 5 to 7, which they feel would lessen the burden of the scoring grant applications and responding to those grants. Their fifth one is to support arts organizations' efforts to exist in Boulder and to expand community opportunities. So there are a number of ways that organizations that could use additional facilities or funds, and so they would like to see us support the need for more cultural venues in Boulder. And that leads into their priority number 6 and last priority, which is to include artists and arts organizations in discussions on affordable homes and professional spaces. And so to look to new development, for example, how could there be office space and performance space for artists and arts organizations in the Opportunity Zone and other potential redevelopment areas to ensure a more stable and permanent environment for arts and culture in Boulder. So that was the Arts Commission. Thank you to them for that. My other board was the Boulder Housing Partners, and Jeremy Durham, their director, wrote this to us, and theirs is easy to summarize because basically they're thanking us for a good partnership. So they're highlighting the recent successes. So a little bit of data since 2017, we've partnered with them on the preservation of 261 units of affordable housing and development of another 234 homes that are complete or under construction, which amounts to a 45% increase in the affordable housing options that they're able to provide. And they point out that the 30 Pearl project alone will provide about $1.3 million in rent burden relief annually, more than any development in Boulder's history, which is pretty cool. And also thanking us for the partnership for creating local permanently supportive housing voucher program to get residents out of homelessness. So it's been incredibly successful, and they've already assisted 18 individuals experiencing homelessness, and it will expand to 48 community members in 2020. And they had a moving success story that they highlighted as part of that program. So that pretty much covers it. Thanks to Jeremy Durham and Boulder Housing Partners for their input.
Great. And which 2 boards does Sam have?
He had Downtown Management Commission and Planning Board.
Okay, so maybe we can read those letters offline. We have all the letters in our packet, and maybe Sam can touch on those at the retreat if we have a few minutes. I guess since we have a little bit of time, I want to ask an open-ended question. Either from the letters that you reviewed yourselves or the summaries you just heard, does that change anyone's thinking about our work plan? Are there things that you think that we should now add to our work plan that at least you didn't submit and maybe others haven't submitted yet? Or are there what are your reactions to what you heard? Did you hear some trends or similarities between the organizations, Mary?
I did editorialize a little bit with the tab recommendation that we review or replace or restructure the EcoPass program. And I believe that is underway. And if there's, I was just wondering if there was somebody on staff that could just kind of give us a little quick summary.
So we have a number of staff members here, including Bill Cowran from Transportation, who hopefully can tell us a little bit about the EcoPass program.
Good evening, Council. Bill Cowran, Principal Traffic Engineer and Interim Director for 5 more days. I did get some information from Go Boulder on that topic. Let me just recite that. Obviously, the Neighborhood EcoPass program is facing significant issues with changes to the program following the PASS program working group and the shift to utilization-based pricing. The only discount provided by the PASS is the city subsidy. There are significant social and economic equity issues related to the ability of the neighborhoods to initiate and maintain the programs, and so our plan is twofold. In the near term, staff is going to explore alternative transit subsidy programs to work alongside RTD's NICO program, utilizing new RTD pass products such as the low-income and the youth passes. And second, the longer-term path is to design a city-based alternative that could replace RTD's NICO program and provide subsidized transit passes to any eligible resident and employee. And obviously, that second effort would have significant financial impacts and would be tied directly into our transportation funding unfunded needs discussion.
Thanks. Any other observations?
Yeah.
Adam, you have something to say? I guess we have several. How about Adam, Mark, and Aaron?
So I had one potential synergy between the two boards. I saw that the Arts Commission was interested in having more artists represented in the affordable housing conversation. And since Housing Advisory Board is so interested in having more listening sessions, they could potentially pair up and have a listening session for local artists around the topic of affordable housing. Just a suggestion.
Good observation, Mark.
Yeah, I was struck by the Water Board's comments about infrastructure. Infrastructure is a profoundly unsexy topic, but highly necessary, and I felt badly that I had not thought about it at all before reading the letter. And if you look across the country, you see city after city in which infrastructure has been neglected to their ultimate sorrow, because precisely for that reason, it's not attractive, it's not very sexy. And looking through the priorities we have listed, and I'm as guilty as anyone, I don't see anybody really mentioning that. And when you have 100 years of unfunded priorities for flood mitigation outside of CU South, I think it's something we ought to be thinking about a little more actively.
Aaron?
That's precisely one of the reasons that we're working on the budget, the deep dive.
Aaron?
Yeah, Mark, thanks for making that point. I also found the Rab's point about the prioritization of the different flood mitigation projects across the city to be a compelling one. And I know we've done some of that ranking and prioritization, but I thought that it would be a nice thing to learn more about at some point, about how we, with all the different waterways that we have and drainages, how we pick and choose which ones come in next, to make sure we're intentional about that. I had a couple other ones. I did from the Arts Commission, they brought up something that I've thought about before, which was about the streamlining of the permitting process for public art. We've gotten some letters in the last few months about one project in particular that has taken an extremely long time to permit, and the Arts Commission in their letter raised some details as well. And I think I brought this up at a retreat 4 years ago about my first one about the idea of looking at our codes in ways that they could encourage public art or remove impediments to it. It seems, we've got some great potential in some of these projects, but they take a really long time. And apparently some artists have essentially given up, given how difficult the process is. So I thought that would be a great one to follow up on at some point.
Other comments or observations? Yeah, Junie.
Yeah, I think from reading the Board of Zoning and Adjustment, and I remember, over the past couple of months, I've had the opportunity to speak with different people, whether it's in the business community or developers as well, and they've talked about, streamlining our processes, and I think that's very important. So I think that's something that we should definitely follow up on, and it's also mentioned in here.
Jane, do you want to comment on? I know that there's a year-long initiative. Well, it's a multi-year initiative, but I think your goal is to have some degree of progress by the end of this year on streamlining regulations generally. That kind of speaks to both to Junie's comment and Aaron's.
Chris Meschuk will address that question.
Good evening, Chris Meschuk, Interim Planning Director, Assistant City Manager. Bob, to your question, yeah, we are in a process within Planning and Development Services, which is the joint service area between Public Works and Planning, that provides all of our permitting services. So we're in an assessment and strategic planning process where we are going to be examining eventually every single process we have to try and examine and look at how can we reduce the amount of manual processing time that it takes to complete a bunch of our processes, and what are areas that we can improve the ability for an applicant to be able to submit an application successfully, where we actually spend the vast majority of our time is in resubmittals. So that's a key area that we want to work on. That initiative is underway now. We obviously won't reinvent all of our processes this year, but over the next few years is where we're going to be diving into those. And Aaron, on your specific question around public art, that's one area that we've been working together on, and specifically now having P&DS staff on the review panel for the art proposals. So we're identifying the permitting requirements ahead of time so we don't end up in those situations that we've been in the past where we're stuck in a FEMA flood review process. So we're trying to improve that process right now as well.
Can I just ask, do you mind, Mary, if thank you for that, Chris. It's great to hear. And so that sounds like getting you involved a little bit earlier. Are we also looking at maybe changing some of the requirements that public art permitting might undergo to say like, oh, we don't have to actually call this an accessory structure, for example?
Exactly. Those are the sorts of things that we've identified, and we've started to brainstorm what are some paths. We have some staff that have started to look into, well, how do other communities define public art from a regulatory standpoint? And at what point and what times does it trigger the need for a building permit, and what times can we just install the public art? And so we're looking into that, and it may result in next year looking at if there's actually anything we need to change in the code to allow that to happen. So that's something that you could look for potentially next year if we find some paths forward or not.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
So, Chris, too, that sounds a lot like things that relate to the use tables. So I'm wondering to what extent there is synergy between the use tables and site review update project and what you just described.
So that's a great question, Mary, actually, because in the end, it is almost a use. And so there may be a way to roll it into the project. I think it really depends on the timeline to be able to complete that staff research. But I'll take that back to the team and look into it.
Other observations, comments? Aaron?
I've already gone, but I have one more.
Go again.
Okay. Well, I felt like I just couldn't leave my former board out. I felt bad for the planning board, so I just thought I'd mention a couple things because I thought they did write a good letter. So just wanted to highlight that they felt like that we should bring equity and community engagement as themes throughout all the work that we're doing, which I thought was a great point. And just the other thing I'll mention that they felt like we should finish our ongoing projects as the highest priority. And in particular, they listed a few. I'll just read them through real quick. Alpine Balsam, CU South, the use tables, the parking code and transportation demand management, community benefits, the East Boulder area plan, and the comprehensive plan midterm update. And then just following on that, Chris, maybe if I can grab you for one other thing, which was that on the parking code TDM, the Transportation Advisory Board also brought up parking reform. And just wanted to check in. That's been on a little bit of a hiatus moving forward on that, but I think we're moving forward on that again. So maybe you could say a little something about that.
That's correct. The parking code and TDM work is now back on the front burner and is moving forward. We have staff working on that, and that'll be a project that that council will see here in 2020.
So maybe, Aaron, that was a nice segue with Planning Board suggesting that we finish what we started last year. Maybe that would be a nice segue into talking about our evaluation. This is the third part of our agenda, final part of our agenda, talking about the things we still have to finish from last time, which are up on the board behind Mary and Adam, and then also the very, very long list of things that we provided staff. Now, with respect to the latter, we all just received that this evening, and so we probably haven't had time to digest this. So take these away with you, and you'll see lots of overlaps in the fact that several people suggested the same thing, which is great. And we will use this as a little bit of a roadmap. Maybe between now and the retreat, between Heather and the staff, we can kind of bunch these together. These are organized by currently by council members who submitted them this week. Maybe we can organize them by, I guess, two things probably I would suggest, Heather. One is as we'll hear in a few minutes, some people listed things that are on our carryover list, and so unless people disagree that we should continue on, as Planning Board has recommended with the things that we started last year, those things are probably going to be pretty easy to tick off the list, right? And then we can probably focus the rest of our day on Saturday on new initiatives, and maybe to the extent that there's some natural groupings, we can go through them. So would that be a good time, Jane, now for you to kind of remind us of the carryover priorities that you have on the wall there?
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah. So on the board, we tried to talk a little bit about the carryover priorities. Let me explain to you a little bit about the coding of this. So we're talking about carryover priorities that are going to be in the different quarters of this year. These are already established council priorities, and the size of the circle makes a difference on the board. So the orange circles are that it should take a small amount of council time. The green is a medium amount of council time, and the large is a lot of council time. This doesn't relate to how much work it is for the staff to do these things. It's a lot of work for the staff to do all of these things. So we're trying to talk to you about the valuable resource that you have of meeting once a week or maybe only 3 times a month, depending on what you end up deciding with some of the other items that people raised in their procedural matters. So we've got staff members that are here to answer questions that you might have. In the audience is Bill Cowren from Transportation, Joe Tadiucci from Utilities, Chris Meschuk from Planning, Kurt Fernhaber from Housing and Human Services, Cheryl Patelli from Finance, and Tanya Angie, the Deputy City Manager. And Tanya will answer any questions you have about our racial equity work and the police oversight work. So you can see in Q1, you already know this, that we're going to be having a full study session on South Boulder Creek and CU South. We may have a pre-discussion about it even. Also in Q1, the racial equity work will be coming forward, and we'll be talking about Vision Zero. In particular, I know, though we don't have Sam here tonight, that he is interested in issues, and you all know this too, with regard to the use of our sidewalks, as well as how do we use these other forms of transportation that are like scooters, skateboards, hoverboards, how do they interact with our transportation system? And so there's going to want to be a discussion about scoping that in the first quarter. In the second quarter, again, South Boulder Creek and CU South is going to come back to you. Joe can talk about the process that we're following, and you'll hear a lot more about it on February 25th. Homelessness, we'll have more information on that. The East Boulder Sub-Community Plan will be coming forward to council. Again, Vision Zero is raising its head and becoming more of your time. Then the financial strategy review is going to be coming forward then, because the study group is going to be reporting to you at the end of April about ideas for moving forward. And if you choose to move forward with continued financial strategy, which I'm pretty sure you will, then that will carry throughout the year. And then finally, the electric utility development will be having more impact on your schedule then. In the third quarter, the police oversight, we hopefully will have the outside auditor hired by then, and we'll have a report from the current study committee that's working on it to see what additional work needs to be done. Hopefully the racial equity tool will be coming forward to you in the third quarter. CMAP is the Climate mobilization action plan. So we are going to be starting heavy work on that at the end of the second quarter and really diving into it on the third quarter. Homelessness remains a constant. And then community benefits, something that's been on the council works plan for a long time, is going to come to the city council then for some discussion and some getting ready for decisions in the fourth quarter. Use tables will also be coming forward in that way. In the fourth quarter, we continue with police oversight, East Boulder Sub-Community Plan, community benefit, climate mobilization, Vision Zero, and a big item is going to be the use tables and standards. So when we think of the council work plan, we think of it not as a one-year plan. We think of it as a two-year plan. We have not scoped out our staff's work plan for 2021 yet, but you can see on the board that in another sheet without the circles on it, we have information about all the things that we think we'll be finishing up with this council in 2021. So advancing racial equity, the electric utility, we don't know where that's going right now, the climate mobilization action plan, financial strategy, community benefit, East Boulder, homelessness, South Boulder, CU South, Vision Zero, and police oversight. So those are all things that will be continuing probably throughout your entire time on city council. So
we're not going to make any decisions tonight, but does anybody have any questions about what Jane just walked through and our carryover priorities and how they were stacked up across the quarters and between 20 and 20?
right, and we do have staff members here if you have specific questions about the items.
So either specific questions about specific items, about what they mean or what our workload is on them, and or how they were placed in the quarters or the years.
Can I say something before we take questions?
Please.
So just as a quick reminder, the point of having this information here for you tonight is to give you a sense of how full your plate might already be, so that when we go into the retreat and we ask you to think about and talk more about these proposed additional and new priorities that you've identified, you have a sense of how much space really is there in your own work plan for juicy new things, acknowledging Jane's point that that is not reflective of how much bandwidth staff has to chase any new rabbits that you might be introducing into their lives as well as your own. So in addition to the questions that Bob proposed, if you wanted to ask, it might also be worth asking or making sure that you have an understanding of why are the circles the size that they are, and if you have questions about what the relationship is between the size of the council circle and if there's a relative bit of information about the size of the staff circle, because even if you have time for things doesn't necessarily mean that staff have time to do things to bring for you. We've had this conversation at many retreats, particularly related to the work of the planning staff, and many of those bigger circles I can't help but notice might be planning circles. Thank you.
Questions or comments? Adam?
So one suggestion I'd have in terms of staff's time is to have that available if we take this thing off, what part of staff becomes available is that planning staff, so on and so forth, and how much of it becomes available to work on something different. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of like a preparation.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
So taking Adam's suggestion, Jane, would it be possible to take priorities we provided? I see you've already kind of allocated them to departments. Would there be a way to take this spreadsheet between now and the time of the retreat and add on from here anything that's not on here? Although I think council members did catch some of those things, many of those things, but also somehow indicate the level of staff effort, or would that be challenging?
Well, I can't do it right now.
No. But by the time of the retreat.
We could partially do it, I think. I mean, there are items on here that we're already doing.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And some of the items that are on these sheets are items that are just part of the staff's normal workload. So one of the items was added to care about ecosystem protection and open space management. Well, that's what we do. So that's not a new item at all. So I guess I wonder what you're asking. Should we go through here? Should staff go through here, pick out things that we think are wholly new, and then try to explain how much effort that would be? Is that what you're asking?
I think that's what Adam.
Yeah, I think that's, or even just the answer of we don't know how much time that would take, and try to eliminate as many of these as possible, essentially, so we really only focus on whether or not we should be adding new things, and if we want to, what old ones we would have to knock off in order to provide you the time and the correct staff members to do it.
It does sound like maybe there's 3 categories of things on the list. The first category is what you're just saying, like already doing that, part of the day-to-day function of staff in that department. Yep, on it. Second thing is part of somebody's work plan already, a specific component of a project that's already underway. But then the third piece is new things that are fundamentally new efforts, new lifts. And for that third category of things, it'd be helpful to know how big a lift it is for both staff and council. Best guess?
Sure, we definitely can do that.
Awesome.
Barry.
So I think another piece of what all of these impact is the budget. And so I think we need to keep that in mind as well. So if you can supply some of that information as well, I think it would be helpful. So that's an ask. And then the other thing, a question that I have is that last night I was at a neighborhood meeting over at Boulder Junction. And the focus of the meeting was what to do about the encampment that is over by Mapleton and 30th Street. And it became very clear pretty quickly that our homelessness strategy has not addressed that to a full extent. So my question is do these circles up here that say homelessness on them include in addressing that aspect of homelessness, and if not, what should we do?
So Kurt is going to answer that question.
I think I add on to Mary's question too, as long as you're answering questions. We had on Tuesday night, I think some council members also suggest some work plan items relating to homelessness as well. And so to the extent that you didn't get a full capture of those so that we can speak about them at the retreat, maybe you can solicit that either tonight or offline, but in advance of the retreat.
Thank you. So Kurt Fernhauer, Director of Housing and Human Services. So so I was at the same meeting that Mary was at last evening. So what's on the board there, which I think is your question, is really an update. Instead of doing the update in the middle of January, doing the update actually off season so we can prepare for the next season through input from City Council. So the idea around that was moving that to either the end of the second quarter or the beginning of the third quarter, which gives us time to implement any kind of changes that would be recommended by City Council. It wasn't intended to have a focus on encampments or individuals who are coming through the city who are experiencing homelessness.
So there were a lot of ideas that were thrown out last night, and where could we start? And would that be an additional work plan item on that in that area?
I think your opening statement was correct, that while we've had a lot of success in the homeless strategy work, we haven't had as much focus or success on encampments or people experiencing homelessness who are coming through the city and are traveling through the city. I think that we need to put more effort into that, and I think I heard some of that on Tuesday night as well. My recommendation would be to maybe for us as staff to prepare information that would be helpful to have a study session that narrowed in more specifically on that versus homelessness, everything. And that would be an extra work item, but I think that we could do that within the staff allocation that we have.
So just so I understand for the retreat, does that mean that if Mary and others would like for you to prepare for such a study session, they need to propose that as a new priority for us to shuffle in with the other proposals at the retreat?
That's correct.
Okay.
So in addition to what Mary just said, I think we heard from Adam and Rachel some other potential work items relating to homelessness. And I think we committed on Tuesday that we would talk about those at the retreat as well. So I guess what I'm hearing then, Kurt, is that it would be helpful for you to get from whoever wants to talk about incremental items on homelessness, for them to get that into you, and maybe just for thoroughness to Lynette too, since she's kind of keeping track of all these things, so that Heather can organize this stuff in a way that's logical. Can you guys do that in the next couple of days?
So I believe that Adam and Rachel, I believe it was the two of you that sent us a document on Tuesday with some of their ideas around that. If there's additional ideas that people have, that would be helpful to know for us to be able to address at the retreat.
I guess I just have to jump in here. The ideas that Adam and Rachel brought up the other night are significant work plan item. They're significant. And it's not just Housing and Human Services that are going to be a part of that. It's also going to be our full team of departments that deal with encampment issues. So it's the police department, the parks department, the HHS department, and the city attorney's office, all of whom are going to have a major part in that effort. So I just want you to know that if these are the things that we want to study, it's going to be one of the major staff work items for the next 2 years. And that is absolutely fine if council wants to add that in. I just need you to know that it will be a big deal.
So I think that gets back to the points that Adam and Mary made about to the extent that there are new things that are big deals, we can scope it from a staffing standpoint, and we can scope it from a budgeting standpoint, so that we can make informed, intentional decisions.
And I think what we've learned from past retreats is it's hard when a thing that you think maybe that's not quite so urgent, we could slow that down or take that off the work plan, only impacts one department. But the thing that you want to add impacts that department, but then also several others. And so we'll just really look to staff to remind us that it's not a one-to-one swap from this thing to that thing, but because we sometimes forget.
Sorry, could I just add on to Jane slightly? So I haven't had discussions with other departments about what that impact would be on them. It's also worth noting that a study session is one thing. What comes out of that study session can be a lot of things. So we don't actually know what that would look like.
And I was just going to piggyback on to, we also want to know if there's, if we took something off of here that already had a bunch of sunk cost work, we don't want to do that necessarily if it's going to derail something that's, 75% of the way there, and we just need to bring it across the line, because that would really not be helpful to the community.
Right, and so many of the items that are on there absolutely do have sunk cost work in it. And when I look at them and think about this particular topic, the homeless topic, there's really nothing that you can take off of there that is going to provide more ability for the departments that are involved in the homeless issue to do that. It is... The way I understood what you talked about the other night, Adam, was establishing a working group, studying other ways in which we can accommodate housing for those who are resistive to housing, the hardest to house. That is a big deal. And we can't take homelessness off of there, right? Because that's the very thing that it is. So it's just making that topic a bigger topic and including more people in it. So it would have to be... Just my personal view is that if council wanted to address that, you would be saying to us and the community, this is our signature goal and priority for the next 2 years. This is what we're going to be working on, and we're not going to add anything new except to finish the stuff we've already got on there.
Junie?
Thank you. I just had a comment because when I was just browsing through the priorities, and I noticed that a lot of us have similar priorities. Do they get folded into one? Or let's say even if we had the same idea, we don't have to send that again because another council member already have that idea.
Right, exactly. There are a lot of duplications in here, or they could be. They're not just worded a little bit differently. So what we're going to do is consolidate this now. Now we're going to probably take your names off of it and consolidate them maybe into 3 buckets. One is we're already doing it. One is we're sort of doing it. I don't know. We haven't thought about it yet. And one is here's the big thing that would need to add a lot of staff to it. So.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I mean, like for myself and I think some other folks, I just highlighted some of the things that I knew that were already on the work plan and just made a couple comments about some of my priorities around them. So that's one of your categories is existing work plan items. But you might put it like a number next to it of 4 council members mentioned this one. So just it could be helpful.
Although I think some of us didn't mention, since we knew what those were, some of us didn't mention them. As a matter of fact, for me, it was a footnote, which is I know you're already working on this, so I'm not going to put it on my list.
Yeah, so maybe it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's just that. I did have one question about scope here, which is I see we're working on community benefit throughout the year, but then also it's on 2021. And so just wanted to confirm, I may have chased Chris off with all my earlier questions. There we go, Charles. Just that, so we're on our second half. Tell me how much work you really see. It's definitely a lot more than a year? What you're thinking?
So Charles Farrell, Planning Department. I think we had it slated that at worst case scenario, it would finish up May of 2021.
Okay, that makes sense, because I was thinking about a year, but maybe it's 15 months or something.
Our hope is to get it done in Q4 of 2020.
Okay, great, thanks.
Right, and the ones that we've got there for 2021, we're not saying they're not going to get done until October 31st of 2021, moments before the election, right? We're saying that they will be accomplished through Q1, Q2, Q3, or Q4. We're not sure yet. And we're going to try to have that information for you at the retreat. So.
Well, I have the floor, sort of. One other thing, just an agenda thing, that I noticed that on Saturday we have lunch as kind of like an hour break, but just thinking that with Adam leaving at 2, that we might need to focus in and really work all the way through until that. So. Working lunch? Yeah, working lunch.
So generally, I find that if people work entirely through lunch, the work that they do is not quite so fantastic. But I wonder if we want to take sort of like a half an hour instead of a full hour so you can get your lunch, stretch your legs, and do things, but shorten it by half.
Something like that.
Okay, cool. Cool with that?
Yeah, I think the only thing is I think we sometimes take Saturday lunch as an opportunity to sit with staff as well. And so let's maybe take at least a half an hour to socialize with staff members.
Or come early for breakfast.
Come early for breakfast. Jane, I have a question for you. I assume, you can confirm, that the allocation of these things between the quarters, in addition to the general load balancing, also was logical based upon work streams and staff workloads and what was in flight and what needed more work. And
right.
There was a lot of thought that went into how you put things through the quarters.
Yeah,
is that right?
It's actually when we thought we were going to bring it to council.
Okay. So we should not mess with this too much, or at best we can ask a question about why is this in the fourth quarter as opposed to the second quarter.
Right.
But there's a reason why these are in the various places.
Right. Ultimately, you'll mess with them through the council agenda committee as the weeks go on, and we'll see, are you ready for it? Are we ready for it? But this is where we've got it planned for, and so moving it around is probably not what we need right now, especially not moving anything forward.
So maybe a related question. To the extent that we agree, and you agree, that some of the new things that we've listed here are things that make sense, do you think you'll be prepared also at the retreat, or do you need time after the retreat to then allocate them? I mean, we can obviously express our desires as far as priority. We can say this is something that's really, really important and I think needs to happen quickly, or as opposed to this is something really important, but it can take a year. Will you be prepared, do you think, at the retreat to put these into quarter buckets, or is that something you'd like to do after the retreat?
We'll do it after the retreat.
Okay.
Do you remember the scope and scale of things that you talk about at the retreat often changes in response to the conversation at the retreat as well?
Right. So with that said, obviously, if somebody thinks that there's a reason why something hasn't happened sooner rather than later, you should express that at the retreat so that staff knows.
Right.
That.
We want to know what your questions are about why things are where they are. Could you move it forward? Could you not? So we want your curiosity about the work plan to come out so that we can help answer the questions that you have on your minds.
Another question, Jane, just focusing on 2020, for example. Let's say all the dots that are on 2020 stayed in the places they are and the sizing's accurate and we didn't mess with any of that stuff. Are we like 60% full, 80% full, 120% full? I mean, give us kind of a signal about like how much room we have.
Well, when I think about, honestly, the limited time that council has to meet, and I'm looking up there, I think you're 60 to 75% full, because we know that there's going to be planning issues that come up, et cetera, but in any given quarter, you've got 12 meetings, and you've got 6 or 7 big things up there for every quarter.
So, Jane, is that taking into consideration some of the items I see on council priorities are to remove fourth Tuesdays? So that would remove...
you'd go from 12 to 9.
And then the other thing is to hard stop at 10 p.m.
Best of luck.
Fully supporting concept.
In which case, we're now at 120% full.
Right. Aaron?
That's going to be my theme on Saturday. It's like, remember, you guys want fewer meetings and want to end at 10. So...
Yeah, because Jane, when you say 60 to 75% full, then I also think of the inevitable things that come up, right? And I think that if you assume that there'll be a couple meetings a quarter that have to deal with things that just came up, I would think we're probably closer to 80% full.
Right. I think that's fair, Aaron. I mean, like, we already know that there's a landmarking thing that's going to come up first quarter, and it's probably going to take 2 hours of your time on a night, and we haven't really scheduled it well yet. So, yeah, that's accurate.
Right.
And then there's the completely out of left field, unexpected things that come up.
Absolutely.
But if you recall, part of the conversation that we'll have at the retreat is maybe creating some criteria for new things and which new things are in fact important enough to bump the rest of your work plan or have substantial impacts to the work that you've already committed to doing. So there might be fewer of those things if you, A, develop, pretty rigorous criteria, and then, B, like, stick to them.
We did one of those two things last year.
Making progress. Sorry, I jumped ahead of you, Aaron. I apologize.
I'm just going to mention, in prior thinking, it might be easy for some of you to lose a quarter of the pay for not having meetings, but for some of us it is not. So.
Fair enough.
Which is one of my items is to normalize the pay to once per month instead of per meeting.
Okay.
And that would be a ballot initiative. I did throw in ballot initiatives there.
Good.
Into my...
That's a charter change.
Yes.
Several of you had items that would be charter changes, so we can talk about that. Some of them were under procedures. I think maybe that one was, Mary, that you had. Yeah.
Rachel?
I would just add to what Adam said, even if it doesn't impact us personally, I think we should be thinking about the future and people who might want to serve. It's already too low paid, I would say, to be to attract a diverse group of people to run for city council. So I wouldn't want to do anything that decreases pay and makes it less inviting.
Yeah, and I think that's where Mary's suggestion comes in, which is maybe we can have both ways, because I know there are some people who don't want to serve because of compensation. There's a lot of people who don't want to serve because of the time commitment. And so if we can address both the time commitment with equitable pay, we might be able to attract a more diverse group of people. Not that this group is not very diverse, but other people who may not be sitting around this table.
And just because I can't help myself, I will add that another thing that I noticed on there as well was to make our boards and commissions more diverse. And another item that I added in there was to expand membership in boards and commissions to people that have close ties to Boulder. And one of the reasons that I suggested that is because when we have put that criteria on working groups for other items that have come up throughout the last couple years, we've gotten a much, much more diverse set of people to participate.
Great. Judy?
Thank you. Can you clarify a little bit, because I don't understand the word close ties to Boulder? Thank you.
So currently, while we do not require a person to have documentation in order to serve on a board, and that was a charter change, we do require Boulder residency.
Other observations, comments? I'm going to make a process suggestion. It sounds like we've got maybe some people who have a few more things to add. And so that staff can spend the week next week when we're off on Tuesday, digesting those and doing the organizing and the stacking and the sizing and the maybe dollar signs and that kind of stuff. Can we, if there are any last minute additions, can we get those in by the end of the day tomorrow? Is that doable for everybody? Hopefully there won't be very many. But let's get them into Lynette, maybe as a central point by tomorrow. And then we'll kind of close it. And then Heather and staff can then organize things in a way that will be most effective at the retreat.
That sounds great.
Anything else in preparation for the retreat? Any questions about how this works or how it's going to work or how it's meant to work? Adam, thank you so much for having that wedding, because you might get us out of there early.
I'm one of the two greens, man. I'm trying to.
All right. Thank you for being green and everything you do. I think unless you have anything else from you, Heather?
Nope, I think we're ready.
Okay, I think we are adjourned early.
See you next week, Council.